Hi everyone. Boxing's in the shitter, isn't it? What's going on? I can't believe it. Tyson Fury, you've let us all down. No, I'm only joking. I'm only joking. Never speak to us again. Danny Flexen here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined once again by Ayman Khan. Fresh off a shocking series of events, at least for most people. I think there might have been a few that predicted it. I think I saw a Shane Carwin headline earlier today where he predicted it. That Francis Ngannou would win. Obviously, he didn't win officially, but a lot of people thought he'd done enough to. And that's what we're going to be talking about for the most part today here on SO Live, the most interactive show on boxing YouTube. And Ayman, have you recovered from the shock of seeing Tyson Fury struggle with an MMA fighter in his professional boxing debut?
My palms are sweaty, my knees weak, and my arms are still heavy, even though Eminem was ringside. The shockwaves are still there running through him, of course. I am visibly still shocked, was shocked as well too. We say in boxing, I wouldn't be surprised if I was surprised. We say in boxing, I wouldn't be shocked if I was shocked. I went to my local Morrison's as well, and I saw on offer humble pie. I took a bite. Will boxing do as well? Because you got a lot of
you paid for it first.
Yeah, I did that first, but we got a lot of eating of that to do. I want to hear your reflections, Danny. I want to hear people in the comments. I want to hear Thunder Road. What does he think about it? Let us know in the comments. We'll get through all of it. Looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, so I will get your comments in just a second. I'm sure there's loads in there already. We are hoping that ace reporter Radio Raheem joins us on the stream as well. He's still out in Saudi. He got the opportunity earlier today to speak exclusively just before he left the kingdom to Oleksandr Usyk, the unified world heavyweight champion. That will be premiered on our YouTube channel, Seconds Out, 6 p.m. So immediately following this live show. So stay tuned to the channel after this and you'll get to hear everything Usyk had to say about Fury, about Ngannou, about the world title, and about Vladimir Putin. So you can't afford to miss it. Now let's go to some of your comments. We are trying to get Raheem on here. He had some tech difficulties, but we live in hope. So let's look at the more recent comments because there was loads before we even started. Amok says, Tyson represented the sport of boxing very poorly this weekend. Let's be real. Yeah, I mean, it's sad times. MK says, imagine if Tyson fought Ngannou in MMA wouldn't last 40 seconds. Yeah, I mean, I think Tyson would probably admit that anyway, wouldn't he? But we'll talk about Tyson's mindset shortly because I've seen some stuff with him recently that worries me a little bit. Usyk may give Tyson Fury a whole leap of problems. Assuming he means heap. That's Sylvester Salomo 2011. Gorguraga says, yet Fury only won 3 rounds. He was thoroughly beaten by Ngannou. Still can't believe it, but it happened. Harry Zianakis, he was posting all over the chat before we started, says, Francis has no knees. That's why he left MMA. I mean, that does sound like a bit of a handicap for any fighter. He also says that's why John Jones will destroy him with his low kicks. I mean, I think all talk of Fury against John Jones is probably out the window at this point. Boxing fans, your GOAT has been exposed, you clowns. Well, thanks, MK. I assume that you might be a boxing fan because you were watching this, but clearly not. I'll take that on the chin. Paul Merchant says, just shows if Deontay had the same weight and attributes as Francis, game over Fury. Not sure I'll go along with that, but we shall see. MK and Muck. What else we got? Joey Abel says, first time Fury wasn't able to use sheer size to bully his opponent. Francis weighed the same as Fury, but pure muscle. Difference in strength was huge. Fair enough. MK again, your sport is finished. MMA owns boxing. Someone tell Dana White, he'll be delighted. And Muck says, when Francis did MMA, did boxing own MMA? There's no need for rivalry. Let's just enjoy both sports. Well said, Muck. Peace and tranquility all round. Crazy Asian Boy says, debut boxer, in inverted commas, smashed the reigning defending heavyweight world champion. I think smashed is probably a bit overcooking it, but we're going to talk about the fight shortly. Eye Test Merchant says, you have to be deluded or a Tyson Fury fanboy to say he won that fight. Or 2 of the 3 judges, apparently. Thunder Road, I'm here. There's vomit on his sweater already. Mum's spaghetti. There you go. Sorry, Mom's spaghetti. To correctly pronounce it. Easy for me to say. So, yeah, let's talk about the fight itself. Ayman, it looks like I might have frozen a bit here. I hope that's not the case for people watching on YouTube. But, yeah, maybe it's the Tyson Fury effect. I've gone into some deep depression. But yeah, what did you make of the fight itself and how it panned out? How surprised were you as it unfolded? Because I think we were all kind of waiting for Fury to wake up.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought. I wasn't surprised from the moment that shot landed, the left hook, what it was, over Tyson Fury when he came in with the combination. I was surprised from the get-go because Fury leapt in with like a big right hand, didn't he, right at the start, and like was trying to make some sort of statement, which we don't really see a Fury at all in the start of its fights. Usually kind of takes some time to just measure up his opponent and then go for the attack. So it was a hard start from Fury, which kind of surprised me seeing him do that. But then I just kind of thought, like, look, this is the usual normal Fury who's testing out his opponent, seeing what he can get from him, and then he'll get onto more of an offense. And round 3 came round, and he just seemed a little bit more tentative. He just seemed not quite in his rhythm, not quite in his stride yet, not quite able to deal with Francis Ngannou, who had that element of surprise, the element of the UFC MMA background that just seemed to befuddle Tyson, which led to that third round knockdown, which was a real eye-opening moment there. Once that landed, like, the adrenaline was like pumping for me to see that moment, to see him on the canvas, look straight to his corner and be like, oh, I'm in something here. I'm in a bit of a mess here, and rise up. And then from that moment, it just kind of seemed like, again, like with Tyson, he just didn't really have much of a plan to deal with the opponent in the opposite corner to him. He was overmatched in terms of strength from Francis Ngannou. He was overmatched, it seemed, in terms of desire by Francis Ngannou. I do think he just about sneaked the win. Just sneaked the win. Call me deluded if you want to, but I just think he did sneak the win over Francis with just low activity and being able to keep the distance and pumping out that jab, saw him through. But it was a very close call here, Danny. Very close call for us.
Yeah, I mean, it worried me how easily he apparently went over as well. I know we've seen Tyson Fury decked several times in his career and by lesser fighters as well, but it didn't look like a concussive shot that hit him or even a particularly powerful one. Maybe Ngannou, wasn't it, ballyhooed in the lead up to the fight that he set a record for the hardest puncher in the world, and Frank Warren was talking about that a lot. Dev Sani as well, maybe tongue partially in cheek, although Dev can now say he did warn everyone. But yeah, so it was kind of a clipping shot, and Fury maybe was off balance coming in. But that was a worry in itself. Fury's balance looked off throughout. He was tentative, as you say, apprehensive. And it's easy to say he underestimated it. In the interviews I've seen with Fury since, he refuses to make any excuses, which I think, speaks well of him. But it is a concern. Someone who's never fought in pure boxing rules previously at this level has come into the fight with Fury. Obviously, he's trained hard. He really wants to put on a great performance because this is where the money is for him in future boxing fights, for example, against other fighters. Anthony Joshua, I know, has been mentioned since. And Fury, how seriously is he taking it? He said he had a great camp. I mean, it's hard to tell. Looking at interviews he's done recently since the fight, he seems kind of lost. He seems like he still can't quite come to terms with what happened. He can't quite believe it. And Tyson, if that's true, we feel exactly the same. We're a bit shocked as well. Let's look at some of the other comments before we crack on. Where were we? Got to scroll up. There's so many. Thunder Road says 100 plus people watching. Let's all hit that thumbs up. Always rely on Thunder Road for that. Michael Rajkowski says Fury, after warming up with the MMA guy, is ready to get Usyk. He's going to get got. We'll see about that. The get got bit was mine, not Rajkowski's. Don't give him any credit. Joey Abel says could have pulled an OAP legend out of the crowd and they'd have done better than Fury. Bo. I don't think Riddick Bowe's got any business fighting anyone at this stage in his life, to be honest. Even Francis Ngannou. I mean, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but I think a lot of it isn't just that you pan Fury. You've got to give Francis Ngannou his credit as well, and I think that's getting lost a little bit in the questions about Fury. Manotti says Ngannou had no respect for Fury's punches. Sorry, the poll that's just gone up has obscured my view of this chat. Fury felt the power. And the poll that has just gone up is who won, Fury or Ngannou? Ngannou seems to be taking an early lead in that as I'm watching it go through, so we'll see how that goes. ITES Merchant says, because he tasted Francis Ngannou's power, which is different, and he started running away after. Michael K says, I wonder if Ngannou can have an official high position in the boxing chart after this match. Well, the WBC President Maurizio Suleiman said after the fight that he is planning to rank Francis Ngannou in the top 10. I think those dollar signs probably didn't hurt that ambition too much. But Yeah, I mean, well deserved. You kind of push the reigning WBC heavyweight champion that close in your first fight. You deserve to be ranked, I suppose. It was an officially sanctioned 10-round fight after all, and he did go the distance and looked like he went the distance more comfortably in terms of conditioning than the reigning world champion, which is alarming for Fury, but a bit of a great thing for Ngannou. Joey Abel says no urgency from Fury in the last few rounds and didn't bother attending the post-fight conference. He'd already secured the bag, knew he'd get the win, disrespectful to fans. I mean, we've got to question what his mentality was like after the fight as well. He was probably devastated, shocked, depressed, a mixture of all of that. And then it's difficult, isn't it? What do? You might say, oh, well, it's stronger to go out and face the public and give them answers. But what if you're still searching for those answers yourself? 1 foot out the door says defend or vacate. Fury didn't rule out in the interviews I've seen fighting Usyk on December 23rd, and he denied that he'd been cut. He said it was merely a graze, shades of Monty Python there, perhaps. But he did show it, and it did look more grazed than cut, but I'm no expert in that field. ISS Merchant says Shane Fury did say that Tyson's footwork was terrible, and he's not sure why. I mean, that would be the sort of thing where someone hasn't trained enough. They're not sharp. It's not that he doesn't know how to box or he's suddenly forgotten, but maybe he just didn't do enough training, and maybe he doesn't want to throw himself or anyone else under the bus by admitting that. I'm not sure. Hardcore says Fury's only wins of note are against an old Klitschko whose head wasn't right. Debatable, because Anthony Joshua went life and death with an even older Klitschko. And against Wilder, who solely relies on a single knockout punch. A single knockout punch that's been good enough to beat everyone else he's faced except Fury. Why didn't Fury rematch Klitschko, fight Usyk or AJ? Well, it remains to be seen. I mean, he still insists he will fight Usyk next, so let's see. 1 foot out the door says Fury hardly trained. I mean, that is a suspicion. Chris R says the boxers these days aren't tough. They need to stop being pussies. There you go. Just needs to take one of them stop being pussy tablets and he'll be fine. Owen says Fury sold himself to the Saudis, unfortunately, and they purposely undersold Ngannou. He didn't bother to train, but is 200 million plus richer with 2 more fights to come. Yeah, I mean, if the ambition was purely to secure the bag, then you can't really criticize. Yeah, he got decked, but he didn't take a hell of a lot of punishment, I wouldn't say. I mean, his face told a different story, I know, but I wouldn't call it a beating, Who else? Menotti says round 8 was wild. I think we all agree on that. Yo Cool says Fury got away with an illegal elbow. We'll talk about that in a minute. SC, Fury won't be able to keep up with Usyk's speed if he fights like he did with Francis. Yeah, I mean, you've got to imagine he'll take the Usyk fight a lot more seriously. And Hardcore, just to round off this latest round of chat, says, if I was Wilder, I would do everything to fight Ngannou. Should be an easy win. Ngannou is very slow and easy to hit for Wilder. No way Ngannou could take Wilder's punches. So, Ayman, let's go with the first point I made just a minute ago. We're all talking about Tyson Fury. What went wrong in training camp? What went wrong in the fight? What went right with Francis Ngannou? Was he undersold on the way in, or did he perform well above even his own expectations?
No, I think he was definitely undersold on the way in. Look, I think when these crossover fights happen, what boxing fans tend to look at is, first of all, there is a bit of arrogance when it comes to it because boxing is the noble art, the noble sport, and MMA is this dirty, rough, disgusting, get it away. We don't want to watch this. We want to watch boxing. This is the pure art. They're not good enough. They can't beat our champion. They're nothing. And for the most part, boxers beat MMA fighters when it comes to being in a boxing ring. But I think that's been clouded by the fight that happened between Mayweather and McGregor. Massive fight, huge occasion, and Mayweather stomped all over McGregor, carried him for as long as he wanted, and finished the fight when he did want to. And that was a bona fide great, all-time great in Floyd Mayweather against Conor McGregor, who's a great in the cage, but his boxing acumen leaves a lot to be desired.
Sure.
I think when it comes to the heavyweights, so this is just my take. I won't call myself a boxing expert. I do a bit of boxing on the pads and all that sort of stuff. But I think the gap closes in crossover fights at heavyweight level than it will do at a welterweight level or any other level, because the fighters are generally have more skill sets and are able to get more things off or do things in the ring because they're not big, lumbering heavyweights who are limited because of the way they're made up, because of their bodies. There's only so much a heavyweight can do in the ring. So that skill set, that gap is lessened between the two fighters, between Fury and Ngannou. You put in the mix as well. If Fury potentially didn't take it serious, I know he's saying he did take it serious, but maybe he didn't. I think he didn't. That gap is closing from that point. A potential of, I heard something someone mentioned here in the comments about Shane Fury. I can't reference the interview properly because I don't remember where I heard it from, but it was one of the channels that Shane Fury mentioned, and I thought it was quite telling. It stayed with me. He said, we've got to guard against complacency or potentially Tyson Fury getting old overnight. Did that happen? Did Tyson Fury get old overnight? Are we looking at that? Are we looking at a Tyson Fury that just is on the decline now and isn't as good as he once was? Or are we also looking at as well here Francis Ngannou, who took his time, who trained with Dewey Cooper, who's also been back and forth in boxing sparring. I spoke to Kevin Barry, I spoke to Joseph Parker, and both of them told me that Francis Ngannou used to come down to the gym back in 2017 and train with the likes of Jojo, spar with the likes of Jojo, spar other fighters. This isn't a complete novice this isn't me stepping into the ring and putting on gloves. This is someone who is adept enough for stand-up game in UFC and adept enough to spar, and as Joe Joyce says, be comfortable in the ring. You don't have to worry about him embarrassing or stinking out the joint. That's what we were looking for. People weren't informed. Enough people weren't informed. I was one of them who wasn't as informed as I should have been about Francis Ngannou. I did think it would be a tough fight beforehand. Didn't expect him to put out what he did put out in the ring on Saturday. It was brilliant from Francis. Looking forward to him being back in the ring again.
And we'll get to some more comments in a moment, but just a quick public service announcement. It looks like, unfortunately, Radio Raheem will not be joining us on the live show. He can't quite sort out these technical difficulties in time. However, when the premiere of his exclusive interview with Oleksandr Usyk goes live in approximately 40 minutes, so immediately following our live show, he will be on the live chat answering any of your questions and comments. So definitely tune in to that interview when it premieres at 6 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Saudi time, which is where Raheem still is. So IA says, turned pro at 20. He's talking about Fury. Abused his body with alcohol and drugs. It was bound to catch up with him. This is the end of Fury. Maybe he has. Ayman just alluded to the possibility of him growing old overnight. And those things you mentioned there, IA, will accelerate that process, the aging process. Not sure what my excuse is, but Fury, yeah. He's certainly lived an eventful life. Michael K says, do you think this match will open a brand new era for much more exciting crossovers? I think from the MMA point of view, they'll be desperate to do it now because they'll see that not so much that Ngannou nearly won the fight, but that he hasn't embarrassed himself and he's made a huge amount of money, more than he ever could have dreamed of in the UFC. So I think there will be a lot more hunger on the MMA side to do it. Will there be as much hunger on the boxing side, having seen how Fury was embarrassed and very nearly defeated? There may be a bit more of a reluctance on the boxing side, although I do feel boxing as a whole needs a hero, holding out for a hero to step forward and defend boxing's honour. But we're going to talk about the effect on boxing in the third part of our discussion today. Manotti says he's off to the chemist to buy some Stop Being Pussy tablets, so I'm glad to hear my endorsement has worked. Dell says, call me a conspiracy theorist. I think it was fixed for the split decision. The only issue was the knockdown wasn't expected. Nothing thrown in the last 2 rounds to allow Fury to catch up on points. Yeah, I mean, you are encouraged to pick a winner in every round, even if there's not much going on. Pimp Andrew says, Fury still mauls Usyk. Better style matchup for Fury. Never thought I'd be saying that. Kelly Marie says, all couch watchers have no idea how to score a match. Tyson won just. Tyson warned everyone that Francis was good and people bagged him out for taking the fight. Now Francis is the best? ? I don't think anyone thinks Francis is the best. I think most people are putting it on Fury's poor performance rather than Ngannou being some amazing natural boxer in his first proper boxing fight. But we shall see. Amok says Mayweather Jr. versus McGregor was an early stoppage. Foxing ban. That deserves a bit of a chuckle. Foxing ban. Fury has always fought to his opponent's level. The better fights he fights, the better Fury fights. That's like a tongue twister, isn't it? Like picking peckle pick up. Oh, see, I can't do it. It just proves it. Dell said, they can never allow Fury to lose as it messes up Undisputed. And I'm sorry, but Francis had to come out with the credit with the split decision, as now the crossover will be huge. Pimp Andrew, general public is sensationalizing what happened. Surprise at Ngannou's performance should not automatically lead to thinking he won. The human mind often fails to separate these. I've seen a number of people making this argument that the fact that he, Ngannou, exceeded expectations to that degree is why a lot of people now think, well, he must have won the fight. We do hear that a lot with big underdogs in fights as well. So it's an interesting concept. Amok says, Joe Joyce, Dillian White, and Chris Algieri had success from boxing coming from a different fighting discipline, even Triple G. Yeah, but they had a huge amount of boxing experience by the time they reached the elite level. They didn't cross over from another sport, and in their very first fight, it's like Pete Rademacher, except he was a boxer, albeit an amateur boxer, challenging Muhammad Ali, and he obviously didn't win or even come close to winning in that fight. But that was in his professional debut, and people thought that was crazy, even though he was from a boxing background. So this is unheard of. Brendan Smith says Fury won most of the rounds. Owen says, any thoughts on this Fury-Peter Fury debate and Fury not being under discipline? Sugar Hill is Fury's friend, not his trainer. Many debates happening now. I don't think anyone was saying the Sugar Hill link-up or any lack of discipline was an issue when Fury was beating Deontay Wilder and lesser threats in Dillian Whyte and Derek Chisora. I think maybe this is a case of Fury not taking an opponent as seriously as the aforementioned fighters rather than putting it all at Sugar Hill's door or at the door of their relationship. Who else have we got? God, there's loads. I thank you all for commenting, by the way. Please do give us a thumbs up, as Thunder Road said earlier, and subscribe if you haven't already. Hardcore says Fury's main weapons are his jabs and clinches. Fury can't clinch to lean on an MMA fighter. I did think that, actually, watching it, that MMA fighters are especially adept in the clinch, and that is an aspect of Fury's game that wouldn't be as effective as usual. Didn't think it'd have this big an impact. Without clinches, Fury is limited. If Usyk avoids the clinches by using angles, he should win easy. I'm not sure he wins easy. Dell says the attempted elbow from Fury was disappointing. Andrew DeFern says no way it was a robbery. It was a close fight. Could have gone either way. Wera Urme says one boxing judge had Ngannou winning. That's enough for me. Not enough for it. Well, I suppose it is enough for him. He's kind of made his name overnight in the boxing community. Dell says it was a Rocky versus Apollo moment. Rocky won in real life. Doesn't really matter if I lose this fight because all I want to do is go the distance. We went the distance. Now he's back on his feet, etc., etc. Thunder Road 200 plus watching. Hit that thumbs up button now. I can only thank Thunder Road because I'm looking at the chat. I can't really scroll down and see how many people are watching. So he's keeping me informed. He's like, I don't know, Sky Sports News, but for this specific podcast. Papa says, and that's Papa, not Papa, as in the Spanish word for dad. It's Papa. I made a video about my scoring of the fight, 96-93. I watched the fight in deep detail, watched every strike multiple times in slow-mo. I wrote every landed strike in detail. Example, left hook to chin. Papa, your channel sounds like a must-see. Phil Dutt, songwriter, says, Fury came in all relaxed and could not turn it on. Sign of a true bully. No reflexes. Interesting. I mean, Ayman, just before we get on to our next subject, which we will do in a minute, but what did you make of the elbow? Was it a sign of desperation? Was it accidental? What was your thoughts when you watched it?
I really can't put my conclusion to say Tyson Fury deliberately threw an elbow, like because he was desperate to get Ngannou off him. He wasn't in that dire straits. He wasn't in that moment. And I think a fighter of his savviness would know to clinch first. A fighter of his savviness would know to hit low first. That's surely a last.
Getting an insight into your tactics here in a boxing ring, Ayman, I think.
Yeah, probably, especially if I was in the ring that last weekend, definitely. But no, it looked like he just again really befuddled in the ring, threw a shot poorly, like we're saying about his poor performance here, threw a shot poorly, and the elbow hit. It hit. I'm not doing a KSI here and saying it wasn't elbow, it was a forearm or whatever. It hit, it landed, shouldn't have landed at all. Referee should have noticed it, probably should have taken a point off as well. And we were looking at a different scorecard, different conversation here as well. But it was a real strange moment, a real weird moment in a weird moment of a fight too.
And just welcome back, Mod Father Vinny, if you will. He's back for one night only, at least for now, as Mod Mother Quiver is taking some well-deserved time off. And Vinny, if you could please put up the next caption, next headline on the screen. And I'll just read through some of the comments we get in the interim. Oh, God, there's about 20. Where are we? Thunder Road. No update from Thunder Road, so we're not over 300 yet then, clearly. Andrew DeFern says, no way it was... Oh, no, I've read that one already. Francis only landed 6 punches in the last 2 rounds, says Kelly Marie. Kelly CompuBox Marie, as she will now forever be known. Yabadas Yaga, I've got that completely wrong, probably. Says, check the highlights closer in slow-mo. Michael K says, do you think Ngannou has a big room for improvement? It's difficult because physically, at his age and how long he's been fighting, albeit not boxing specifically, it's difficult to improve. And he's obviously in great shape and stuff anyway. But in terms of the technique, I don't think you learn as quickly the older you get. But I think there's definitely some room for improvement. Yeah, I mean, if we think Jake Paul can improve and already has massively with his background, Ngannou's come from an actual combat sport that involves striking. So yeah, the improvement in him is still, a lot of untapped potential. Papa, yeah, we've already seen that. Where we got? Nobia02 says, it's not that Fury is bad and Ngannou was just underestimated. Boxing was always what Ngannou wanted. I'm glad he's finally able to showcase what he can. Yeah, exactly. Let's give Ngannou his flowers rather than just panning Fury. There's plenty of time and room to pan Fury, and a lot of people have done it on our channel and other channels. But let's give Ngannou his flowers also. And now we've got the new headline up, as you can see. Does the Usyk fight happen on December 23rd? As I said, I saw an interview with Fury, the most recent one that I think he's done, and he didn't rule it out. He said, if that's the next fight, when it happens, it happens. He said he insisted he wasn't cut. He merely had a graze on his head, which is fair enough. And he still seems keen to do the Usyk fight, albeit, as I said earlier, seems a bit lost, a bit confused. December 23rd does seem really soon, especially as now it appears more and more like Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. will more than likely be going at it on that date and probably in the Middle East. But what do you think, Ayman? Do you think it's too quick a turnaround? And if it is, will Usyk kind of let him out of the contract? How does that work?
Firstly, December 23rd as a date. I hate that. 2 days before Christmas, spending money before Christmas when
Ayman's the Grinch.
When money is tight as well. I think that's terrible. I hate that date completely. Getting that out of the way. Do I think the fight happens? It's down to the Saudis, really. The Saudis hold all the playing cards. They've signed to fight. So the Saudis pull the trigger in terms of when they want them to fight now. So if the Saudis want to maybe side with Fury a little bit here and give him a bit more of a reprieve, and they say maybe see more in Fury, they go, all right, maybe you can have a few more weeks, and we'll go in February instead. Or if the Saudis want to get this fight done December 23rd, they'll go for it. As far as I understand, Riyadh season ends in February, or basically around next year. So it makes sense to have had this fight to open it, and then really this fight to end it, to close the season, bring down the curtain, and have crowned an undisputed champion at that moment. So that's why, kind of leading up to this, again, with that boxing fans kind of cautiousness, not really believing any date at all until they walk into the ring. You never really had that December 23rd date down and penciled. Contractually, from a point of view, again, it's who's enforcing the contract, and that goes down back to the Saudis. And Fury, is Usyk really going to sue the Saudis and say, no, I want to enforce this? I'm sure Usyk's money will run out a lot quicker before the Saudis do, and vice versa. So no, I don't really think any fighter has much of a say apart from the Saudis here in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain irony, I guess, in that Fury was saying previously, when Usyk was saying he needed a 14-week camp, and Fury was saying, no, if you don't fight on December 23rd, you'll get sued, you're in breach of contract. And now it seems like the Fury team are trying to extend the date, and it's Usyk's team saying you'll get sued for breach of contract. And as you point out, it's very likely that either fighter would have to sue the promoters of the bout, or the promoters would sue them rather for breach of contract rather than suing each other. But all talk of suing aside, I would think that Usyk, as a fighter, unified champion and chasing legacy, if you like, would want Fury to be at his best, or at least to have no excuses going into the undisputed fight. You get him after what was a relatively punishing fight with Francis Ngannou just 7-8 weeks later. It's going to be exceptionally tough. And I think, it's always going to be an asterisk against that win for Usyk if he gets it. So I would think, knowing the sort of honourable man Usyk is and the type of champion he's been and continues to be, he would want Fury to have no excuses and to be, purportedly at least, at his very best. Now, saw a couple of good comments here. Just bear with me. Tony Roberts says, I fight. When I haven't seen any footage, it's very difficult to prepare. The only person who knew what Francis Ngannou was capable of was Mike. Like to see Francis Ngannou up against another top 10 for ranking of how good he is, I'm guessing. They're talking about Tyson Luke Fury, his middle name. I'm not sure why. Eye test merchant. This is the equivalent of in football. A massive team like Barcelona winning 3-2 and playing terribly, but Girona deserve to win because they outplayed Barcelona. I don't think it is. I think it's more than that. Because Girona are at least a football team. They've experienced, they played many football matches before. They might not have played at Barcelona's level and they might be a massive underdog, but at least they've played the game. They know the rules. It's not like you've come in over to a different sport. It's like I don't know, they played 5-a-side. They were a 5-a-side team, and in their first 11-a-side game, they pushed Barcelona all the way. That might be a slightly more correct analogy there. Minotti, Fury said he trained and no excuses. So Ngannou is a fighter. Big props to him. Eye test merchant. I don't think the fight happens December. It'll be like end of January or beginning of February. Inclined to agree. Where Erme says, Papa, the 3 judges only agreed on 3 clear rounds for Fury and 2 rounds for Ngannou. 5 rounds could have gone either way, according to the judges. Yeah, I mean, it was quite a scrappy fight where not a lot happened. And I think I looked at the punch stats. Sorry, I'm taking Kelly Marie's CompuBox nickname away from her already. But I think Fury outlanded Ngannou in something like 8 of 10 rounds or 7 of 10 rounds. So if you do it purely on the punch stats, I think he did enough to win, even with the knockdown against him. Owen says, Danny, what happened with your relationship with Tyson Fury? I remember the classic interviews you two used to do. I think a lot of it is just that I'm not a nice person to be around. No, I'm joking. I think what it is that I don't really go to shows much anymore. When I did Fight Week for the Dillian White one, we did an interview there. Chisora, I think Radio Rahim was over for that. And then the rest have been in Saudi. And I look after my little boy at the weekends. So I don't really go to many fight nights anymore. And if I'm not covering the fight night and someone like Rahim or Ayman is, I don't always do the fight weeks because we want continuity and consistency. So I don't think the relationship's bad or anything. We still chat now and again on message and on Instagram and stuff. But yeah, just a serious answer to what was probably a tongue-in-cheek question. Papa says round 10 was difficult to judge, but I gave it to Fury because he was more active and landed slightly more. Joey Abel says, Fury blaming inactivity for performance, but wasn't Francis out of the octagon for longer and can't have boxing ring rust if he's never been in one before? I don't think Fury is blaming it. Not in the interviews I've seen anyway. Fury seems to be holding his hands up and saying, look, it was a tough fight. There wasn't really much to go on. We didn't know how good he was going to be. He turned out to be quite good. And it was a tough fight. He's given me a tougher fight than most boxers. So, I don't think he's made excuses. People around him may have. Dell says, the issue with the 23rd date is that Fury has made himself to look like a fool. I like Fury. I'm not hating. But he said Usyk would be sued if he doesn't keep to the 23rd date. Then you have to go back to the ultimatum for Joshua to accept at short notice. Now the shoe's on the other foot. Very much so. What is it? Play silly games, get silly prizes. Michael K says, do you think the UFC will regret Ngannou? Do you think it will make PFL more famous? Definitely a yes to the latter. I think it's wonderful for PFL that they've got someone who's done that under contract. Kind of similar to when, albeit this is a much larger scale, but when Clarissa Shields beat Savannah Marshall in a fight that got a lot of coverage, and she was signed to PFL, and now we've seen Marshall follow suit. So I think, yeah, they'll get a lot of related credit from it, and people wanting to see Francis Ngannou fight and so on. Whether the UFC regret it or not, I'm not sure, because I'm not sure how much benefit they would have got because they're already a huge entity. Like PFL have got a lot more to gain. If you'll forgive me a pro wrestling reference, and I believe the first one, miraculously, on today's episode, CM Punk joining AEW benefits them a lot more than it would have benefited WWE because they're already a behemoth, they're already the market leader. Whereas joining AEW really brought them onto a different level and brought them into the homes and the attention of people, fans that they wouldn't normally have connected to. I think it's the same with Ngannou being a much greater benefit right now for PFL than he would have been for UFC. Precision says Sugar Hill is moving to Morecambe. I'm not sure how that will affect things. I know he loves Morecambe. Nathan Scott says, stop crying this and that. He cheated and we didn't, and people are giving him more round. Oh, no, sorry. And we didn't get the call. It happens all the time. Like lick your wounds and schedule a rematch and settle it in the ring. AG says, Ngannou done better than he was supposed to, and people giving him more rounds than he won. Ngannou won round 3 and 8, and Fury won the rest of the rounds with one swing round. Yeah, I mean, we could go back and forth on who won the fight. But Ayman, Usyk, December 23rd, does seem too soon. But in a kind of related question, does your view on who wins the fight or how clearly they win the fight between Fury and Usyk, undisputed when it eventually happens, has that changed markedly after what occurred on Saturday night?
No, not really. Because I'm pretty sure and I hope I have said this beforehand in other lives that we've done. If I haven't, I'll put it out here. But I'll put this out straight. I won't tell any lies here. I have changed my mind previously beforehand on my opinion, and I'm probably liable to do it until the fight does happen. But pre-fight, before this fight that happened between Fury and Ngannou, I favoured Usyk. So that's where I stood beforehand. I don't see any real... I don't that doesn't really compound that performance from Fury and Ngannou, from Tyson Fury specifically. It doesn't really compound any more kind of credibility to my feeling about that pick on Usyk either, because I don't think that version of Fury, I highly doubt that version of Fury turns up in the ring against Francis Ngannou. So I don't, it's still a slight favor for me for Usyk, but that's who I go with, even with that performance that we saw last weekend. I just want to add as well, in terms of Michael K's comment, we're talking about winners and losers here, and there's lots of time to vote in our poll still as to who you thought won the fight, whether it's Tyson Fury or Francis Ngannou. But first of all, boxing has won here because it's lit a light fire in the boxing. It's got the boxing world talking as well as the MMA world talking here, combining the two. The eyes are on the sport massively right now. And Ngannou's won. Ngannou's put himself in a brilliant position. He's got a claim to have beaten the WFC heavyweight champion, the best, the consensus best, the number one in division. Therefore, as boxing goes, the heavyweight division goes, etc., whatever that cliche is, a great win, in inverted commas here. The PFL are massive winners here in this. They've signed Francis Ngannou, who left the UFC. They've got him under contract. His first fight back at the PFL is going to be huge. Everyone's going to be turning into that one. He's going to be getting a movie on him as well. Raheem interviewed Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson said, people have been on the phone to me and said, we want his life story. We want to put it into biopic, whatever. Massive upturn for Francis Ngannou. Let me talk about a big loser here. We've talked about Tyson Fury, who's lost the fight, as it were, quote unquote, in this fight week. Big loser here is Dana White. Dana must be ruined the fact that he let Francis Ngannou go out of his contract, because he would have had someone, again, who has a claim to have beaten Tyson Fury coming back to the UFC and then having a big fight there in the UFC against John Jones or whatever. The problem is, like you would say, that it's not going to hurt the UFC. It's going to hurt Dana, because people are going to be asking Dana in the post-fight press conferences, hey, what do you think about Francis Ngannou? And Dana is the type to not want to answer the question, not want to talk about it, not want to answer it because of his ego there. He doesn't even want to mention it, the fact that he let that opportunity go, the fact that when Floyd Mayweather fought Conor McGregor could only fight Floyd Mayweather until the UFC got a massive chunk of the money that was owed to Conor McGregor for Conor McGregor to even take that. Conor McGregor had to give that to him before he was allowed to take that fight. That's part of the problem with the UFC. So big winner in Francis Ngannou, big losers in the UFC and Dana White in terms of this whole fight week.
And once again, before I get to the next round of comments, just to remind everyone that immediately following this episode of SO Live, you can tune in to an exclusive premiere of Radio Raheem's interview out in Saudi. Final interview Oleksandr Usyk gave in Saudi before leaving the kingdom. All about Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou, Vladimir Putin. Everyone's catching strays, or maybe not strays. I think they're probably on target. Unmissable interview. Trust me on that one. So please tune into it. Radio Raheem will be on the live chat to converse with people who are watching at the time as well. 6 p.m. UK time. But let's get to some of your comments. And while I do, Vinny, Modfather, if you can hear me, please can you put up the third and final caption for this week's episode, and we'll discuss that after the comments. So scroll through these. Brendan Smith says Fury is not fading. I mean, could have picked a better time to make that statement, to be honest. But we shall see. Where are we? Papa says, I think this fight makes Fury more likely to win against Usyk. Fury will train like a madman after this. Don't know who wins the fight. SW, I don't think that's Steve Wellings because it's not SW boxing, but another SW, an imposter, if you like, said, I thought Ngannou won 6 rounds to 4. Dell says, it only changes with the media and the casual fans. They flip-flop all the time. Fury has stunk the place out on so many occasions, but then the next fight he excels and he's king again. Always the same. Michael K says, Ngannou said he wants to play boxing and MMA both. Do you think he can do both? He's still young. Yeah, I don't see why not. If there's nothing in his PFL contract preventing him from doing so, and if he carries on excelling in the boxing ring against well-known fighters, it only benefits PFL, who, as Ayman pointed out, have him under contract. Untitled Bobby C says, Wardley looked good in his win. Yeah, I was a bit disappointed in Adelaide. Like, after all the talk and the build-up between both of them and the bitterness and the rancour, it didn't really catch fire. It just kind of meandered along, and then Wardley ultimately turned up the heat, and Adelaide couldn't go with him. He was exhausted by that point, I thought. But yeah, good win for Wardley, and he's definitely way beyond fighting at domestic level anymore. I'd like to see him relinquish that British title now and start fighting around fringe world level, ideally. You know, he's a bit older than the average heavyweight prospect, I suppose. He's had a shorter background coming from the white collar scene, but yeah, I think he's ready now for that fringe world level. Joe Vega says, I think Tyson won the fight after he got chinned. He thought, oh, okay, I better chill here because he knows he's got undisputed coming and it was only a money fight. Didn't want to get seriously hurt. That's certainly a point of view. Who else? Frank and Pope says Tyson Fury needs to fight Usyk and then retire. He is an embarrassment with his greed. Wow. AG, that Fury wouldn't have beaten Usyk, but then we said that Usyk, who fought Daniel Dubois, wouldn't beat Fury. Still got Fury beating Usyk. Phil Dutch songwriter says, could Fury be back on the sauce? Well, I'm sure he is after the fight. I'm sure he is by now, drowning his sorrows. Manotti says, fabulous Fabio turned up. He certainly did. CP4 says, Shane Fury's interview was spot on. So yeah, as you can see from the caption that's now on screen, what does it all mean for boxing? More specifically, we've seen elements of this in the live chat already in this episode, but I've seen it across social media platforms in the last couple of days. And that's a lot of MMA fans giving stick to boxing fans, you know, our guy beat your guy, you know, first ever fight, etc., etc. The impact of Tyson Fury as a reigning world heavyweight champion, officially still unbeaten, going life and death with someone who, as good as he is and as good as he showed he was on Saturday night, hadn't fought in a professional elite level boxing match before. What does it say about boxing, if anything, Ayman?
Well, first of all, I want to focus on the positives, and I'll get to that the negatives that surround it for the boxing world. Great positive in terms of how many people like this is a buzz topic. This is a topic when you know the barometer of things when the next day your mates text you who don't really know about boxing and they want to discuss Fury and Ngannou and discuss how Ngannou beat him and Fury's this and Fury that. Like people are actually talking about boxing again, which doesn't happen too often. There's a lot of people in the chat right now. We're blessed to have so many people in the chat right now, but aren't quite tuning in for Catchall and Ares. Hopefully you guys join us for the leaner days, the leaner months. You can do that by clicking the like button and subscribing. We appreciate every single one of those subscribers and every single one of those likes and every single one of you in the chat. Just going to open the curtain a little bit. The podcast tonight might not have happened, but we said there were fires going on, there was rain going on, and we said, no, we have to deliver for you guys. Me and Danny rally the troops, and we're here to speak to you guys every single week, not just this week. And that's the point, though. But the boxing world is abuzz with the conversation right now, and boxing is sometimes seen as on the decline, seem to be on a little bit of a decline right now. So that's a positive on the whole, I think. In terms of the actual fight, in terms of the negative points about, look, our champion, and it's reliant on whether you take the point of, is someone in the boxing world when it comes to this, is the boxer the defender of the sport in this scenario? Is the heavyweight champion the defender of the sport in this scenario? And I'm inclined to believe that yes, de facto they are. They're promoting boxing, they're protecting the sport. They kind of have to put the sport on a pedestal and perform on a pedestal against someone who isn't of that conviction, isn't of that standard, and from that point of view, it is a bit of a black eye for us. We're a blow. That's right. It's a bit of a blow for us because you know we thought Tyson Fury would be dispatching of Francis Ngannou. We thought that Tyson Fury would be playing with Francis Ngannou, and he didn't, and that's the problem here for us. So maybe in this scenario, we kind of take the hit in this circumstance and rise up again. Maybe the MMA guys can have this one. They can watch the next one because they don't often get to experience a win against us. They didn't get the win, but they can claim they got the win this time around. But it's not a great look for boxing when this does happen, for sure.
Yeah, I just want to read this comment from Joey Abel because I want to make a similar point. He says, with Misfits, Tommy not looking overly impressive versus a novice and now Tyson doing the same. Boxing is meant to be a specialist sport, not a good look at all. And I do kind of agree with that. My problem with Misfits and crossover boxing generally from the start, and I'm not a massive fan of it, but I don't hate it either. I was kind of on the fence, I suppose. But my real issue with it was that it makes boxing look too accessible, too easy, too achievable to the man on the street. And my worry, I suppose, was A, that it diminishes boxing, but also that someone would end up getting hurt, that someone's reach would exceed their grasp. They'd go in far too difficult in terms of matchmaking, and they'd end up getting seriously injured. But this result at the weekend, and I know there's no one out there sitting on their couch who's got the fighting skills of a Francis Ngannou, but things like this and results like that and Tommy against KSI just further underlines or sends the message that boxing is something that you can do. The boxing isn't something that you need to do from 7 years old and spend the old, 10,000 hours perfecting your craft. Boxing is something that with the right mindset, the right background and the right set of circumstances, you can compete on relatively even terms at an elite level. And growing up, following boxing, reading about it, watching it, I've never really believed that. But even I find it hard to come to terms with, and not in a sense of, oh, I'm so sad about it, but in terms of understanding it, because my brain wants to make sense of it. How can someone who hadn't boxed anywhere near that level before, who's come from an MMA background, but striking for MMA is very different from boxing, how are they able to compete on equal terms with who I thought and still think is the best heavyweight of my generation? It does beg a belief. And I think that's why there are so many people. And as I've said, Fury hasn't made many excuses, but I think there's a lot of people, fans of his, people around him who are making excuses of camp problems, underestimating Ngannou, whatever the reasons are. Some even are saying he carried him and it went wrong. And I think there's a need amongst boxing fans, and I include myself in this, to explain it somehow, to make it acceptable, to make it explicable. Because if you can't, you are just saying that someone from a boxing adjacent sport, but not specific boxing, can compete at the highest level without training in it, that discipline for years. And I don't know what do we do with that? What does that tell us about boxing? Do we need to reevaluate how boxing works?
I don't know, Danny. Like, I kind of feel like, first of all, this is a non-answer here, but I want to make this point. Isn't it sort of fitting in a way that this kind of happened to Tyson Fury? Not that it was comeuppance in any sort of way, but isn't Tyson that guy that you look at? He's not body beautiful. He doesn't look like the heavyweight world champion. He's the everyman. That's why he's so likable. That's why people connect with him. That he doesn't look like the Muhammad Ali's or the anti-Joshua's or any other heavyweight you can think of that's muscle bound and heavy. And you if you didn't know who he was, you wouldn't think of him anything other than a big hulking guy. That's part of his story that people like and think, if he can do it, surely I can do it as well. So that's some sort of fitting in a way. But I just kind of think, for me, like, in this scenario, we've really underestimated how adept Francis Ngannou was. I think a previous commentator mentioned about that kickboxing background, and we've had, like they mentioned, the successes in the sport from the kickboxing background of being able to win world titles or being able to compete at high levels. And I think that's what we're looking at here. I think Francis, it's an event which, if Francis Ngannou continues to box, I think we'll look at it differently and say, okay, he's proved himself now. He's not just some guy who's just stuck on a pair of gloves. He is someone who can actually do something in the sport. He is someone who's studied the sport. He is someone who's put their time into it. I just think that right now it hurts for boxing. It smarts for boxing right now because it's happened to the man at the moment, and that's what we've kind of got to lick our wounds on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. Now we've had a second ever super chat, so that's a cause for celebration in what's been a dark time for boxing. Adam Lord, we appreciate your money. Ayman's going to get a haircut. I'm going to get a new wardrobe. He says, I would ask this though: if that was Zhang, Usyk, Joe Parker, etc., do we get the same result? Ayman, I'll let you field this one.
Yeah, good question. I sort of asked a similar sort of question last week, in that, would we be as confident in this fight if it was anti-Joshua? And so you can add anti-Joshua into the mix to Adam Lord's question. It depends on really the person. You're asking, is it possible if Zhang could underestimate someone, if Usyk can underestimate someone, if Joe Parker could underestimate someone? Looking at Zhilei Zhang, has Zhilei Zhang not been less than in his performances against the likes of Jerry Forrest? I know he had an issue, but on the night, anything can happen. If that was Ngannou in the night, you'd like to think that Ngannou might have got the win on that night. Usyk has shown no real flaws as well, and Usyk is someone who we look at as a character, as someone to be unbreakable, someone who be completely prepared and focused. That's how we see him, and potentially you'd say like Usyk wouldn't have slipped up like that, but Usyk and Tyson Fury are completely different characters, completely different people, and for the most part in Tyson Fury's career, it's worked for Tyson Fury, his approach. Sure, he gets knocked down. Was he exposed last night? I'd say no. Yeah, he gets knocked down. But does he not get knocked down throughout his career? Has he not risen off the canvas throughout his career? It's just shown a flaw of Tyson Fury's, which is also one of his strengths, that he can get up from these knockdowns too. Joe Parker, well, what do you say about Joe Parker at this point in time? We don't quite know currently where he is, and he's trying to rebuild back up again. Is he a beatable heavyweight? A lot of the heavyweights will look at Joe Parker and say, yes, he is a beatable heavyweight. On the strength of Francis Ngannou's performances, would you favor him? Probably not. You probably just about favor Joe Parker in his sort of style, but you'd give Francis Ngannou a chance. The truth of the matter is here really is we've got one test point against the greatest in the division. It's not enough to go on just yet. The surprise factor has gone completely from Francis Ngannou's performance, and anyone who'll be facing him in the future will be looking at the tape and looking at what he did. And don't forget as well, 10-round fight as well. Couple of extra rounds. Are we talking about Tyson Fury tying up those rounds too? Over 12 rounds. Are we talking about Zhang beating Ngannou, Usyk, Joe Parker, whatever? A lot kind of up in the air at the moment. There isn't a definitive answer for me, but I still favor all three of those against Francis Ngannou.
We appreciate that, Adam Lord, just as we appreciate the money, the moolah, the cash, the wonga, etc., etc. We've got the results of our poll through. Francis Ngannou, Tyson Fury, who won? And as someone pointed out, the irony earlier of it being on a boxing channel, Francis Ngannou is a pretty big winner here. 63% of people who voted, and we got quite a lot of votes compared to our other polls that we've done. Say Francis Ngannou won, 36% Tyson Fury. So more flowers for Francis Ngannou, and well deserved. We're going to go soon, but just to say, I've said this enough already, but we've spammed it in the chat now as well, and it's pinned. It's our pinned comment in the chat with the link, Radio Rahim's exclusive interview leaving Saudi Arabia with Oleksandr Usyk. Don't mean to imply they left together. I'm not trying to start any sort of scandal there. But what I mean is he interviewed Oleksandr Usyk just before they both left separately from the kingdom. Talks about Fury and Ngannou and a lot more, December 23rd as well. Can't afford to miss it. Begins at 6 p.m. UK time. So in around 7 minutes time, we'll be clear and gone by then. So you can go and watch it. Radio Rahim will be responding to your questions and comments on the live chat for that premiere. So just check out our pinned comment. And Ayman, sad time for boxing. I'm not going to try and put a mask on about it. But what are your kind of closing comments for this week? Give us some hope.
Danny, quickly, I know we rush your time, but just what do you think of that split? Because I thought that split would be a lot higher for Ngannou.
Yeah, I mean, we are a boxing channel, and maybe there is an element of, a lot of boxing fans not wanting to accept. But then you had Fury winning, didn't you? So maybe it is just that we've got, an educated boxing audience who know how to score a fight. I'd like to think that. I thought Fury probably did enough, just about. But again, if you just watch the fight as a whole and don't score it round by round, I can understand why you would think Ngannou should have got the decision. So I don't know how much of that was going on.
No, look, I thought it was a great occasion, great event. People who watch this podcast, and I hope you guys join us for the coming weeks on SO Live every Monday. Know that myself and Danny, we like being entertained. We're big wrestling fans as well as big boxing fans, and that's sort of part of it as well. Seeing the stars, seeing that importance put on such an occasion. I know it wasn't a traditional boxing fight in the sense of two boxers, but it was a boxing fight, and it was against two fighters who gave it, well, it was against one fighter who maybe prepared and gave it everything, and it was against a WBC heavyweight champion who wasn't maybe all there, just about squeaked through, but still not the greatest look. But in terms of the aftermath of it, of people talking about it, that's brilliant, because we've been in a bit of a lull at the moment, and we needed that bit of talk, that conversation, that contention. This might be, if you want to look at the way I'm seeing it through my glasses, the best outcome for boxing right now, to have that conversation going and keep on going throughout the weeks coming, when you'll be tuning in to SO Live every Monday. So very much appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button as well on your way out.
Yeah, otherwise Thunder Road will not be happy. Really appreciate it, guys. See you next week.